Hello and welcome to the Vehicle Maintenance Tracker Quick Start. This is the screen that you'll see when you start Vehicle Maintenance Tracker, and it should start on this first tab. You'll notice if you go to some of the secondary tabs that you get this message saying that basically there's no data entered into your database yet, so therefore those three tabs don't provide any functionality at that point. So basically, in order to get that functionality, you just have to put in some data. The way you enter data, and it's consistent throughout the application, is you put data in and it shows up on the table on the bottom of the window. Now, three of the pieces of data you have to add also are associated with a window where you add data. So for example, in order to add maintenance data, you have to be able to add a vehicle, a provider, and a task, and then put in the parts, labor, and tax costs. And you can only put in one of these, or all of these. You don't need to put in. Then you need to put in your mileage in kilometers or miles for the odometer, the date of service, and any note you may want to put in there, like, for example, Sam was a good mechanic, or I really like the service advisor. So on the vehicle, let's go ahead and start by putting in a vehicle. Since there are no vehicles in the pop-up, it only gives us the maintain vehicles item. So we'll just put in a Chevy Malibu, and we'll make up a license plate number and a VIN number. And you can put in these dates. They're all optional. The only thing that's required here is you have to put in a vehicle name. And you can't put in a vehicle name that duplicates one that already exists. And you can put in the price you paid, or the leasing price, and the odometer, and you can also put in if you purchased it to own it, or if you're leasing it, and who you purchased it from. When you're ready to add it, you just press the plus button, and there it is. If I wanted to make a change to this vehicle, I'd simply double-click one of these items in the list. That would activate the change button. It also activates the delete button if you want to delete it. Then you can change a field. Maybe I don't want it to be white, maybe I want it to be blue, and then hit change. And there it is. Most of your data entry fields are going to respond this way in Vehicle Maintenance Tracker. You put in data, add it, and then you get a list at the bottom showing what you've already done. Once you put in a vehicle, or for that matter, a provider or a task, you don't have to add them anymore. They're there for your use. Once you're done, you close it. So in this case, we don't have any providers here either. So we're going to add a provider, and it's the same thing. The name is required. The other fields are not. And more than likely, you'd want to put in this other information. So I'm going to add it, and there's my additional. So I now have a provider. So now when I go to my pop-up, you can see it's got one of the providers. If I had two providers or three, they'd all be listed in the pop-up. So as you can see, particularly for vehicles and providers, it's going to be more or less a one-time thing when you put them in, and then later you use them. You don't have to keep adding them. Well, let's just make a task here called an oil change, something simple that is done a lot. And we'll say the interval is every 4 months. And these are not meant to be suggestions, just numbers I'm making up. You can put in a task description, and this can be for you or anybody else, or it could just be a general task description. So there we go. Now this interval is going to be used later to determine whether you're overdue on your maintenance. So it's important that you put in intervals that make sense for you and make sense based on the owner's manual and what the manufacturer suggests. So again, you can put in as many tasks as you need, and they'll all be listed. And again, if you double click them, you can change and delete them. So there we go. So now when I want to add maintenance, I would pick the vehicle I want, who's providing it. We're saying it's a dealer called Jones Chevrolet, and we're getting a task done called an oil change, and we'll say that the parts cost $15 and the labor was $20, and the tax was $2.54. And I'm just making something up here. And we'll say the mileage on the vehicle was 25,241 miles. And so there we go. And notice I press the plus button, and there's my maintenance. Let's say I had another vehicle that I wanted to put in, and we say this is a, and I'm going to skip putting the other information in. I'm just going to add the name. Let's say we had a Ford F-150. Let's also say we wanted to so I'm adding in the windshield wipers there. So now I'm going to say that I'm changing, and I'm going to say that instead of Jones Chevrolet, I'm going to add a provider called Self, meaning I'm doing it myself. So the parts cost me $35, and the labor was nothing, and there was no tax. And the mileage on the vehicle was 18,524. And I've added it. So here we go. So now, at this point, we've only got 2 items on this list. And this window, you can size it wider or longer if you need to, so you can see more on this list. But eventually, you get more than you can see on this list, or more than you want to deal with. And instead of scrolling up and down, which you can easily do, you might want to just limit the list. So if I want to limit it to just the Ford F-150 and a certain task, I can do that. And then I can go to maintenance and see what's overdue. There won't be anything overdue on these because we just put the maintenance in, and we did the maintenance as of today. Or you can show everything that's been done for the last and most recent. And what that means is, let's say I did an oil change back in December of 2014. And now I did another oil change in May of 2015 for the Chevy Malibu. Only the oil change for the May of 2015 is going to show up. The one in December of 2014 is still going to be in the database, but it won't show up on this particular list when this button is pressed. So it's meant to show you the most recent thing for all of your tasks. And you can select for which tasks you want to limit it to, but I like to use all. And then finally, the cost and distance will show you how many miles you've driven based on the maintenance you've entered. And since we entered all of the maintenance and we didn't enter any distances in, it's going to show 0, but it shows the costs. And then reporting is the same thing here. And anytime you see this little calendar icon, that means you can just use the graphical calendar if you want to select something. And then you can select all the reports or none of the reports. And several of these reports, like the vehicle list, provider list, task list, and the overdue list, they are not driven by the dates because they're simply a list of every one of those, like every vehicle in the database, every provider. And so they're not date-based, but these reports, for example, are based on dates. When you say print, it basically opens them all up for you to look at. You can then print them. It opens them up in preview so you can see what they do. And that's basically the overview, and I hope that's helpful. Gives you a good idea how to get started, I think, and how to start using it. Feel free to email me questions if you don't understand usage, or if you have a suggestion for a new enhancement, that would be great too. Thank you very much. Thank you for watching.